Hey guys, what's going on? John here, back again for another Magic the Gathering video. And in today's video, I've got another deck tech for you all, this time on Aegar, the Freezing Flame. Aegar, the Freezing Flame is a card I really enjoy. It's a giant tribal deck, and I hope you all enjoy it too. It's a new card from the Kaldheim set. Before we get into the main video, I've just got some quick channel promotions to go through. If you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and turn on the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload. It takes almost no time at all, and it's the easiest way for you to show your support. I've also got a somewhat new Discord server, so if you'd like to get exclusive polls, exclusive ranks for patrons, and the ability to talk to me, you can join that Discord server. I've also got a Patreon that will be linked in the description below. There are tiers starting from $1 that allow you to support me, get your name in the credits of each video, and also gets you special perks on the Discord and for my videos. With that out of the way, let's get into the deck tech. First up is the Commander. Aegar the Freezing Flame is a 3/3 legendary creature, giant wizard. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, if a giant, wizard, or spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card, and it costs 1 blue-red. This deck will be focused around playing giants and big splashy X spells, but mostly giants because I decided to take it in a fun, tribal way to build the deck. Our first category in the deck is Giant Problems, which, of course, is our giants. We've got Basalt Ravager, which deals X damage to a target, where X is the number of giants, basically. Bone Crusher Giant can shock a creature or any target. And he can also come down as a 4/3 that deals damage when he's targeted with spells. Calamity Bearer doubles up our damage for giant spells, which is extremely strong in a lot of situations. Cyclone Summoner is a board wipe that basically wipes all permanents except for giants, wizards, and lands, which is super powerful because we usually get to keep our entire board. Hammerfist Giant also deals 4 damage to each creature without flying in each player, which allows us to wipe our opponent's boards, sometimes our own, but always draws us a lot of cards with Aegar. Giant Harbinger tutors a giant to the top, which is extremely efficient because we want all of our giants as early as possible. Frost Titan is a giant that basically acts as a big beater and can also tap down some permanents, and Inferno Titan can pump itself and also deal some damage divided among any number of targets. Quakebringer stops our opponents from gaining life, and it also deals 2 damage to each opponent on upkeep if it's on the battlefield or if it's in the graveyard and we control a giant. It doesn't trigger Aegar, but it's still a pretty strong ability. Next we've got Sunrise Sovereign, which is a giant lord, gives them +2/+2 in trample. Surtland Flinger allows us to fling a creature, and if it was a giant, it deals double the damage equal to its power. Tectonic Giant allows us to generate some card advantage and can also deal damage to opponents whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell. Finally, we've got Thrix the Sudden Storm, which allows us to cast our CMC 5 or greater spells easily, and also can't be countered, and has flash and flying. Thundercloud Shaman is basically a one-sided board wipe because all of our creatures will be giants, so it will kill all non-giant creatures. And Warchief Giant has haste and myriad, meaning we make a copy of it for each player that we can when it attacks, which will usually generate us a lot of card draw off of Aegar. Next up is our second category, which is Scorched Earth. These are going to be our big X spells, big damage spells, all of the sort that deal a lot of damage to creatures, draw us a lot of cards. Blasphemous Act is a classic commander board wipe that deals 13 to each creature, usually drawing us a ton with Aegar. Museum Mortars can deal 4 damage to each creature we don't control, which will usually be enough to draw us a bunch of cards. And Star of Extinction can destroy a land and deal 20 to each creature and planeswalker, allowing us to draw a ton of cards and wiping the board pretty much always while getting rid of a problem land. Chandra's Ignition allows a creature we control to deal damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent, saving one of our creatures with the board wipe. Fateful Showdown can deal a bunch of damage to a creature, and then we wheel. And Comet Storm is a giant X spell with multi-kicker that allows us to deal damage to other targets and to a player themselves. Fiery Confluence is a modal spell that allows us to deal damage to opponents, creatures, and destroy artifacts, which is super helpful when generating triggers with Aegar and having some removal. Giant's Immolating Inferno can deal X damage to 3 targets, which will usually be a pretty efficient removal spell, and can bolt some opponents in the face. And Nahiri's Wrath forces us to discard some cards, but it makes up for it by dealing a lot of damage and being a pretty cheap spell. Earthquake is just a big X spell that deals X to each creature without flying in each player, and Rolling Earthquake does the same thing, except it's each creature without horsemanship. Starstorm costs a little more to deal X damage to each creature, but it also has cycling for 3, meaning it's more of a modal card that we can be happier with drawing at certain other times of the game. Category 3 is our tribal payoffs. This is pretty simple, it's just cards that pay us off for playing giants. Adaptive Automaton and Metallic Mimic both pump our giants by +1/+1, and Coat of Arms pumps our giants by +1/+1 for each creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it, meaning if we've got 3 giants, all 3 of them get +3/+3. And it also pumps up your opponent's creatures, so you do have to be wary of that, but usually it will be benefiting us more. Kindred Charge and Molten Echoes both generate tokens of all of our giants that get exiled at the beginning of the next end step, but it's usually worth it because we'll deal a ton of damage with Aegar and get a lot of damage through, a lot of card draw, and therefore it'll be pretty worth it, and it'll be pretty easy to win the game outright with these cards. Reflections of Lichara is even better because it copies any giant spells that we cast, meaning non-legendary giants, we just get a token copy of them, and that's permanent, so it's better than the other two, and probably one of the best cards in the deck. We've also got Herald's Horn and Urza's Incubator, both of which discount our giants, and Herald's Horn can also get us some extra card draw if the top card of our library is giant. And Mana Echoes allows us to add an amount of colorless equal to the number of creature types we control that share a creature type with it when a creature enters the battlefield, usually meaning we'll generate some mana when giants enter the battlefield. Vanquisher's Banner and Kindred Discovery both give us a lot of card draw, with the Banner giving us the extra bonus of pumping our creatures, and Kindred Discovery doing it on ETB and attack. And Shared Animosity pumps up our creatures by a lot when we attack with multiple giants, which is super helpful for forcing a bunch of damage through and winning the game. Next up is Category 4, our ramp. It's pretty simple. We just got to ramp into our giants. Since a lot of them are pretty high costed, it's a lot easier to be able to ramp using these cards. Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, Talisman of Creativity are all 2 mana artifacts that tap for our colors. Fell Warstone is a 2 mana artifact that taps for any of our opponent's colors, but usually we'll also be tapping for our own. Sol Ring is the classic ramp piece, costs 1, taps for 2, and Wayfarer's Bauble allows us to pay 2, sacrifice it, and search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle our library. Finally, Thought Vessel is a 2 mana artifact that taps for colorless and gives us no maximum hand size, which is super helpful when we draw a ton of cards with Aegar. Category 5 is Stomping Grounds. These are the cards that will usually win us the game if they go unchecked. Along with Giants and Tribal Beatdown, we also just have these cards that can just finish things off super quickly. Toralf, God of Fury, allows us to deal excess non-combat damage to creatures or planeswalkers, and when that happens, it deals the damage equal to the excess to any target other than that permanent, meaning a Blasphemous Act usually just kills our opponents. It also has a flip side of Toralf's Hammer that can unattach itself to deal 3 damage to a target and return itself to its hand, and also buffs up some legendary creatures, which can be helpful in certain situations. Fiery Emancipation triples damage from sources we control, usually causing us a huge blowout against our opponents, and represents a very quick clock if this card can stick. Leyline Tyrant functions as an Omnath for our red mana, and when it dies we can pay a bunch of red to make it deal that amount to any target, usually just bolting a player for a lot of damage. Category 6 is Giant Insight. This is just going to be some card draw spells because we need a little bit of extra card draw, and also some card draw payoffs because we'll be drawing so much from Aegar that we also want to have payoffs for drawing cards so that we get more benefits off of it. Body of Knowledge has P&T equal to the number of cards in hand, no maximum hand size, and when it's dealt damage you draw that many cards, which is super helpful with our big X spells. Seagate Restoration is an MDFC that functions as a shock land and also can draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand +1 and gives us no maximum hand size. And Rhystic Study taxes our opponents unless they want us to draw some cards, and usually we'll get a bit of card draw off of that each game. We've also got Ominous Seas as a payoff, which allows us to remove 8 foreshadow counters and make an 8/8. Sphinx's Tutelage mills opponents and they keep going if the cards share color. And Teferi's Ageless Insight draws double off of our Aegar triggers, which is super helpful for getting extra card advantage. Category 7 is pretty simple. It's our spot removal and counter spells. We want to be able to remove our opponent's things and counter their things before they hit the battlefield so that we can protect our own game plan. Chaos Warp, Pongify, and Rapid Hybridization all function as highly efficient removal spells. Chaos Warp gets them another permanent, and Pongify and Rapid Hybridization gets our opponents a 3/3 when they resolve, but it's usually worth it. Arcane Denial, Counterspell, and Delay are all 2-mana counterspells that are unconditional. Arcane Denial gives our opponents some card draw and us some card draw, which can be helpful, and Delay gives a card suspend. Usually when a card is suspended with Delay, it becomes pretty irrelevant once it hits the battlefield later, just because it's been so long that a lot of the time it's just useless. Finally, we've got Mystic Confluence and Swan Song. Confluence is a modal spell that allows us to counter spells, bounce creatures, and draw cards, and Swan Song is highly efficient, being a 1-mana counter spell that can counter enchantments, instants, and sorceries, and give its controller a 2/2 bird, which is pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Finally, we've got Cyclonic Rift, which can function as single target removal or overload for 7, which returns all of our opponent's non-land permanents to their hands. Obviously, this is so good, and we couldn't not include this, even in a deck that runs so many damage-based board wipes. Finally, we've got Category 8, Lance the Giants, which is just our lands. Cascade Bluffs, Fiery Islet, and Shivan Reef all tap for our colors, with the Islet being able to sacrifice to draw a card. Steam Vents, Sulphur Falls, and Training Center all have a chance to enter untapped and tap for both of our colors. Command Tower, Path of Ancestry, and Forbidden Orchard all tap for any color of mana in our commander's color identity. Path of Ancestry gives us the added bonus of scrying when we cast spells with creature type that shares with the commander, which will always be Giants, which is super easy because we have a ton. And Forbidden Orchard gives our opponent Spirits, which may seem a downside, but in this deck, we'll usually be getting extra triggers from Aegar when those Spirits get hit with the damage-based board wipes, so it's actually a bonus to us to give them the Spirits. We've also got some value lands. Desolate Lighthouse can give us a quick looting trigger while also tapping for colorless. Reliquary Tower taps for colorless and gives us no maximum hand size. And Unclaimed Territory can tap for any color to cast a giant spell, basically. We've also got River Glide Pathway, which flips into Lava Glide Pathway, which can basically either be an island or a mountain, whichever we need at the time. Exotic Orchard does the same thing as Fellwar Stone, except on a land. We've also got 8 islands, 13 mountains to round out the land slots in the deck. Because we're a 2-color deck, we don't need that many dual lands, and it helps keep the price down. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and while you're at it, turn on the notification bell to be notified every time I upload. Also, check me out on Patreon. Your support there is greatly appreciated and allows me to continue making content. Make sure to join the Discord for exclusive polls about new videos and the ability to chat with me and my recording group. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.